starts with an early Christmas present for farmers, perhaps even a miracle at Christmas, because the government has finally caved in and it's made changes to their hated new inheritance tax rate on farmers. Inheritance tax thresholds will now be doubled, more than doubled, from £1 million to £2.5 million from next April. Well, it's a victory of sorts for British farmers who have staged a series of mass protests in London and across the country since Labour announced this policy in October last year. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Mr Jenrick, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Merry Christmas to you and all of yours. And I wonder here if the Labour Party has suddenly transformed itself from the Grinch at Christmas to something of a miracle granter. But the question is it too little, too late?
Well, look, good afternoon. It is very welcome for farmers this Christmas, but we should never have been in this situation. Rachel Reeves, like every prior Chancellor, was warned that this policy would be massively harmful to farmers, to rural communities, to food security, and every other Chancellor decided against it, Labour and Conservative, but Reeves, in her wisdom, went ahead. As a result, it has been a year of hell for farmers and their families. In my constituency in Nottinghamshire, I've heard the stories firsthand, the worry, the fear, the energy and time and money that's been wasted on legal advice as to how you can handle this situation. And worse than that, Martin, there are farmers who have taken their lives as a result of this. I went with GB News in the summer to meet the son of a farmer in Yorkshire called Philip Charlesworth. He took his life the night before Rachel Reeves's original budget because he had heard her briefings and speculation, and he felt that that was the only way he could be certain that he could hand their family farm, a small farm, on to his son and their family. And there are tragedies like that across the country. That is not a unique situation. That is the consequence of this terrible blunder that Rachel Reeves has made and is now partially correcting.
Robert Jenrick, those stories are always so heartbreaking to hear. But here's the thing I just don't understand about this, and indeed the winter fuel allowance raid before it. Why on earth would somebody with a spreadsheet in Whitehall decide it was a good idea to go after farmers, the very people who feed us, who keep us alive, to go after pensioners who've paid in full their stamp their entire lives? The amount of money, Robert Jenrick, was peanuts. Chicken feed. Is this a government that's just completely out of touch with reality?
Look, I think the truth is Rachel Reeves is completely out of her depth. She's unsuited to be Chancellor, and she's demonstrated that time and again by the mistakes that she's made, talking down the economy, raising taxes like national insurance has led to more and more people going out of work, increasing the minimum wage for young people just at a time when tens of thousands of young people and students are struggling to find jobs, and where she's taken things away like the winter fuel allowance or hiked taxes like this family farm tax. They've just not been thought through. They've been deeply unfair and unpopular, and then she's had to U-turn. But the thing that strikes me the most are the lies, because we're used to incompetence with governments. What is so prevalent with this government and this Chancellor are the lies, and the winter fuel allowance and the family farm tax are such clear examples of that, where they said one thing when they're in opposition and did another thing almost as soon as they came into power. Steve Reed, who was then the Shadow Environment Secretary, went to the National Farmers Union conference. He said to them, I'm not going to touch inheritance tax. It was repeated in different ways by Starmer and Reeves as we approached the general election. And then what did they do as soon as they came to power? They did precisely the opposite, and they created the family farms tax. As a result of that, I just don't think people can trust Rachel Reeves. And that is a very difficult place to be as a Chancellor, where no one from the markets and the financial industry to ordinary people like farmers and pensioners and small business people simply have no trust in you as a Chancellor. That's why I felt for a long time she has to go and be replaced by somebody who we can have more confidence in.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Now, Robert Jenrick, of course, the Labour Party would deny that they were lying. They would no doubt claim they were listening to the voters and changing their position to reflect that. But when you look at the Labour Party's U-turns this year, Robert Jenrick, it's longer than my daughter's Christmas list. Seriously, the inheritance tax U-turn, the benefits cuts that was and then wasn't, the grooming gangs inquiry they were forced, dragged into, winter fuel payments, of course, national insurance wasn't going to go up, then it did, international aid, the two-child cap, WASPy payments. There's a legacy of U-turns. Is this a government that has so many positions that the public just don't know what they stand for?
Yeah, the lies before the election, the U-turns afterwards, bad policies coming forward, some of which then subsequently scrapped when people take to the streets like the farmers and protest against it. This government doesn't know which way it's going. As a result of that, it's the most unpopular and discredited government that we've ever had, led by Starmer and Reeves, two incompetent people unsuited to hold high office. The sadness is that we are going to be stuck with this government, whether it's Starmer or Reeves or other non-entities who might take over from them in the future if the Labour Party chuck those out. We're going to be stuck with this for a number of years, and a lot of harm can be done during that period. But look, I do believe this is a great country. We can turn it around. We can get the economy going again, and we can make a more fair economy, one where ordinary people can actually see their wages rising, public services improving, enterprise has a reward, so you can start a small business or run a small farm and not feel you're going to be taxed to the hilt, or it's going to be taken away from your kids and your grandkids later on. That's what we've got to work towards, but it's going to be time, and we've got to eventually get rid of this Labour government because it's failing the British people right now.
OK, Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, thank you very much for joining us, and once again, a very Merry Christmas to you and a prosperous New Year.
You too.
Hope to see more of you in 2026. You take care. Thank you. And the Environment Secretary Emma Reynolds spoke to the media earlier, and here's what she had to say.
So we've listened to farmers and businesses across the country, and we want to protect more family farms and businesses. So we're announcing today that we're increasing the inheritance tax threshold for individuals from £1 million to £2.5 million. So that means a couple with an estate worth up to £5 million will pay no inheritance tax when they pass on their estate to the next generation.
Well, let's now speak with the farmer Clive Bailey and his magnificent son Henry. Welcome to the show, Team Bailey. It's a delight to have your company, and especially because, Henry, you were in the studio at the beginning of this protest and you put a question to the Prime Minister, to Sir Keir Starmer, which, of course, Chris Hope, our political editor, put to the Prime Minister. You, my son, have been a starring role in this protest. So perhaps I could come to you first. Henry, what's your thoughts on what seems to be a good news day for farmers? Is this a miracle before Christmas?
Well, I think they've really helped out the farmers and have finally started listening. And I think it solves one of the many problems farmers have. And they've definitely taken a good step forward with it.
Well, Clive, every time Henry comes on, I say you must be so proud of your boy. But look, you must be proud of the protests that the farmers put in. You guys have been absolutely resolute. You never, ever gave up. There's been a result today, Clive, but is it enough?
Yeah, well, we said that right at the start, didn't we? This issue wasn't going to go away, and I think it's just kind of started to define Labour's, time in government so far. The sound of tractor horns, doesn't it? Look, this is great news and I think it comes a massive relief for a lot of small farms. Changing that threshold will help a lot of people and kind of take a lot of pressure off this Christmas. But got to be clear here, it doesn't go further enough. It's still out of touch with really the amount of capital invested in a more, those kind of medium-sized or larger-sized farming businesses, still family farm businesses built up over multiple generations. It's still not enough to really fully safeguard them. But welcome is a good step in the right direction. Also, something that I think it hasn't addressed is, it's been mentioned throughout your show earlier, Martin, it's still done nothing to really take away that incentive for that older generation, have been left with no time to plan. So, I'd really like to see them kind of, now they're obviously in listening mode. This is fantastic to see finally a year down the line. So listen to what we're saying about the older generation, give them some concessions on the holdover, which gives them time to properly plan their financial affairs and safeguard the future of their family farms.
What's your take, Clive, on the timing of this announcement? A lot of people are scratching their heads. It's just been dumped on Christmas Eve. On the one hand, great. Now, you guys can enjoy an extra glass of sherry. Well, not you, Henry. You'd certainly, Clive, can enjoy an extra glass of sherry this evening. But why now?
Well, I guess, they're very conscious of what you were just saying a minute ago, is they don't want to look like they're making these U-turns. I've heard a few say it's not a U-turn, it's amendments or whatever. We don't have to look at it like that. I think what we need to look at it is politicians of all colours just need to listen to the feedback. That was why they made this mistake in the first place. The numbers, when they're announced, they were ridiculous. Me and many others have spent the last 12 months on interviews with yourself and many others trying to explain why these numbers just weren't the right numbers. And that's what happens if you don't consult properly. So it's great news. And yeah, you could see it as a great Christmas present to those smaller family farms that can, breathe again, start to think about planning their future and investment in their farms. But equally, the skeptic in me says, is it just convenient timing while there's no ministers to directly comment and the news is talking about other issues, perhaps?
OK, I want to give the final word, if I could, there to young Henry. Henry, I was very moved by your sentiment last year where you said you were heartbroken about the fact you wanted to follow in your dad's footsteps. You wanted to be a farmer, but you thought all this policy, all this government meddling made that less likely. With today's news coming in, are you hopeful you can follow in your great dad's footsteps and become the next generation of farmers on the Bailey farm?
Yes, I'm really excited and looking forward to following in my dad's footsteps and my granddad's before him. And I can't wait to take over the farm. It will be amazing.
Do you know what? I'm just so happy to hear that. Honestly, mate, it's just these human stories that just make it all so amazing. It's been an emotional ride. You guys have really been at the very, very forefront of this. Thank you to you both, Clive Bailey and Henry Bay. Have a magnificent Christmas, truly, and I hope to see you again in the new year. Thank you to you both, and of course, look to all your family up there. Thank you. Yeah, good bit of news there. Humanity. Now I want to hear from you, the friends of GB News. We can vote in today's You Decide poll for free by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And today we're asking, does this U-turn show the government is listening to the people? Get in touch now and let us know, and we'll have the results read out on the show shortly.